Hi, it's Sarah here with another quick tip, or actually today it's actually more 3 tips because I'm looking at how we can separate words within a sentiment. Sometimes it can be perfectly okay to use the whole sentiment as it stands, but occasionally you want to actually sort of separate them out so that they're on different lines, or even use just part of a sentiment. So I'm going to give 3 different ways that we can achieve that today. The first one is very simple but doesn't suit all sorts of uses of this. So I'm using this sentiment. This is from In the Moment, You're in My Thoughts, and I'm just wanting to separate out the you're in and my thoughts. So I'm just inking this up and stamping it onto a strip, a thin strip that is actually just a scrap from something else that I've used. So I'm going to just stamp that on like that. I seem to have got a little bit of a smudge there. And we'll do it again, turn that round and do the other end. See if I can avoid, I think it was just probably a bit of dog hair from my dog under the counter at the moment. So we'll do it again. Right, not perfect, but good enough for being able to show you what I'm meaning with this. So one way that we can do this is simply to snip, and you could use a paper trimmer for this if you want, but we can snip it there, and then we can snip it in between where we want it. Now I actually recommend that you stamp this twice and you snip right up to the words that you want to get rid of. These do go very close together. So let me just stamp this again. I'll do it on the back of here. And I would usually recommend making sure that the ink is fully dry before we start snipping. But it's really just a demonstration today. So I've got the you're in. And this time I'm wanting to go as far away from the my as I can remember, as I can get. And then we're just going to snip again there. So now we've got You're in My Thoughts on 2 separate lines. And that is an easy one. But sometimes you don't want it quite like that. You're perhaps wanting to get these closer together so that they will fit on, you know, they'll go on to something like this conversation bubble that I've been using this week. And that's what I'm actually after. So I'm wanting this sentiment in that word bubble there. So another way that we can do this is to partially stamp this a couple of times. Now, it's really important with this to get the stamp fully clean. So let me get my stamp cleaner. So we're going to clean the stamp. We're going to dry the stamp. And then we're going to blot the stamp, and I'm going to huff on the stamp and just blot it again so that it is as clean as it possibly can be. So now I'm wanting to ink just that first bit that you're in. I've just got a little bit of backing from a stamp, but you could just use card. I use this because the ink doesn't stick to it so much. So I'm just going to pop that on to mask off the bit of the sentiment that I don't want. And I can pick this up. So we're going to stamp that, and then going to stamp the "you're in", and that's great. And now we need to clean the stamp again, just as thoroughly as we did last time. So really important that this is as clean as you can get it. And that means, like I say, blotting it, puffing, blotting again. And I can just see a bit of an imprint there, so I'm going to do it again. And keep doing it until I can't see anything, because I don't want to get any of that other bit of the sentiment when I stamp this last bit. So I need to double check. So I'm going to where the M for the "my" is. I've just covered up the other bit that I don't want. Like that. And I'm going to stamp that just below, like that. And you can see I've actually caught the edge of my stamp there, so that's not great. So take good care when you're doing this. I pressed that a bit too hard. Still get it wrong these days, you know. We're not perfect. So now the last way we're going to do this, and I'm going to clean this again, is not for the faint of heart. This is something that I do with my stamps on a fairly regular basis, but you've got to be quite confident if you're going to do this, and you need to be sure that you are going exactly where you're wanting to separate. So I'm going to cut this stamp. Now it does mean that that's going to invalidate any sort of guarantee from Stampin' Up. I won't be able to send it back. So, you know, this is something that you do at your own risk. So I am going to cut between those letters. And I've got some great scissors there. So I have now got that as two separate stamps, but they will go back together on the block to stamp as originally intended perfectly easily. So they can be used like that. Or, like I say, I can use them. Let me grab another small block. And you might not even want to sort of put them together kind of like this. You might want to stamp one and then the other so that the spacing is less of an issue. But I'm going to see about this. Let's try this. And okay, I'll just grab another scrap. And I do keep my scraps for testing like this, or just use the background paper. So, and you can see that it's actually caught the back of it a little bit differently. It's really important to cut it on the rubber side so that you know you're in exactly the right place. When I put my sentiment, the label on the back, it wasn't exactly lined up, and that happens quite often, to be quite honest. It does give you a rough idea of where things are, but if you're going to cut your stamp, cut from the rubber side so that you know exactly that you are cutting where you need. So I am happiest actually with this version. But like I say, this is not for the faint of heart. This is one of those tips that I would recommend only doing if you feel really confident. If you don't feel confident, then one of the other options, like I say, that one, yes, I made a mistake. I caught the end of this corner of my stamp on there, which has rather spoilt it. But it's a scrap of paper. It doesn't take an awful lot of time to redo that. That version does take a little bit longer in terms of having to clean the stamp off in between, re-ink it, stamp it again, mask it, etc. If you want something quicker, then just onto a strip of paper and snipping it apart works very well. And like I said, then I would recommend actually stamping it twice so that you can leave as much space at either end as you are able to give that little bit of breathing room to the sentiment. Some sentiments work better than others in being separated out. This wasn't the easiest one to separate out. There are others that are much easier to separate out. But I wanted to show you with something that is a little bit of a challenge. So I hope that helps. I'm now going to use this, cut it into a conversation bubble to use for my card today. So please hop by my blog to be able to see the finished result. Subscribe to my channel below to see a quick tip like this every Friday and a quick card on a Monday. Thanks for stopping by.